Joining me for What a Week, Lindsay Williams, my co-host, Mia Kruger from Kruger International, and Joanne Baynham from Sterling Wealth. Thanks so much for joining us. Lindsay, we're handing straight to you at this stage.
You know what happened last week on Friday the 13th, which we didn't talk about, and which has only come to light in the last 48 hours, Bronwyn, is that there was an asteroid that passed 400 kilometers from the Earth. Just went past the Indian Ocean, and around about the same time that we were on air, I read about it this morning, and it was the size of a London bus. But can you imagine? The size of a bus would have caused enormous problems. But the markets haven't been problematic at all this week because we've had operational updates and trading updates and good results from JSE listed companies. And the ones that I want to talk to Mia and Joanne about are 91, first of all, Investec second, and also Spar. So there's been some really good stuff. Maybe Joanne, we start with you as you're new to the show.
Lindsay, as you probably remember, I'm not really a stock picker. I did notice that 91 came out with some results and commented that the markets remain quite difficult. I was surprised to read that, given that I think this year they've been probably one of the best fund managers in South Africa, particularly South Africa in terms of their communications. And every time I speak to their salespeople, they tell me that they're getting huge inflows. So that was a bit of a surprise.
I agree with Joanne. They've actually been very good in their communication. And like she said, they have fared well during this year. They were actually one of the asset managers in South Africa to the beginning of this year, end of last year, that was actually bringing money back into the country. And they were utilizing a stronger rand. I don't know at what level they did that because the rand was pretty strong in the beginning of the year and then weakened. I actually meant they used the weakening of the rand during the middle of the year. So them and Coronation seem to do that, and it seemed to have impacted their performance pretty well. So we know that the most of their performance is on asset management fees, and it seems like they're still in favor. I think also it was very important, as Joanne mentioned, the communication. It really kept people invested in their funds. And they've actually also launched a couple of very interesting funds focusing sort of on infrastructure, renewables, etc., globally, which I think will be very popular in the coming years.
And Spar, give us a sense of Spar's results.
Yeah. So Spar did very well. I mean, the market really loved the performance when the results came out. The share jumped, I think, something like 10 or 11%. So they grew their revenue. They grew their market share, they contained their costs, and they did, very well. I thought initially that Shoprite were the guys who took the best position in the market when lockdown came because they were so well positioned with their new app, etc. But Spar seems to have actually impressed me, and I didn't expect the good results that came from them.
It was interesting actually, Mia, because 6 months ago, on the occasion of their previous set of results, I spoke to Graham O'Connor, the CEO, and I said, have you benefited from the fact that you're sort of more of a corner shop than one of these hypermarkets where you have to drive your car and you have to go beyond, at the time, the lockdown restriction distance? And he said, you're absolutely right. And maybe something's happened. Maybe people have started to become more habit forming when it comes to shopping, and that's why Spar has done so well. Share price, as you quite rightly say, up around about 13%. Bronwyn, we've got the South African Reserve Bank decision and also the vaccine story this week, apart from everything else with the results.
So rates on hold. I mean, firstly, can I go to Joanne on this?
Yes.
It was a 3-2, I think, very close call, but 3 in favor of rates staying stable. And it would have been good just to have that rate cut speaking as a consumer. Joanne, your thoughts?
Completely. I think the SARB continues to miss opportunities. They should have cut long time ago and cut more aggressively. They finally came to the party in 2020. We have an economy that is in serious trouble. We were serious trouble before COVID. We're going to be, people are telling me now that we're going to recover to 2019 and 2023. Those are the optimistic scenarios. Globally, they've cut interest rates because it works. It gets consumer spending again. It makes companies' cost of capital drop. Why we're living in this German Bundesbank type mentality in this country is completely beyond me. But yes, I mean, the fact is a lot of consumers in South Africa don't borrow money. So interest rates doesn't always work for all consumers. But yeah, why would we want to keep the currency strong? It's out of our control. So I have a very different view to most bond managers out there. They love the fact that interest rates remain so high because they can make a fortune in the bond market. But I think the SARB missed a trick again.
Mia wants to come in. Mia, you're murmuring there. You're agreeing wholeheartedly with Joanne.
Well, I must say that we've seen a significant rate cut over the last 8 months and year. I mean, it's more than halved. And so I'm not that fazed about the level that we're currently at. I think when you look at the financial companies in South Africa, we just heard from ABSA yesterday saying that they lose about 250 million in revenue every time the rate gets cut by 0.5%. So we need to just think about, as Joanne mentioned, the other half of the consumers as well. So we know South Africans have historically had very high levels of debt. It would be good for the economy. It would be good for economic growth, the lower the interest rate is, but it's already very low. So the flip side of the coin is people who are retired, people who don't have a lot of savings, that actually trying to get some sort of income without taking a lot of risk in South Africa is getting really, really hard. So, I mean, people were so used to
you don't actually agree wholeheartedly with Joanne.
No, so I mean, I'm fine with the interest rate where it is at the moment.
I just think if you look around the world, what have central banks globally done? They've cut rates aggressively to the point of actual madness. And okay, so let's forget about interest rates for a second. What did Cyril come up with? He said, let's try and lend 500 billion, get the banks to lend 500 billion. So back to your comment on ABSA. I read yesterday in ABSA's results, they've lent a whopping 1.8 billion rand under that consumer story. It's no point having lower interest rates if the banks won't lend anyone any money. So the whole thing doesn't work here. We have an economy that's in deep trouble. We have unemployment that is scary levels. You know, how we don't have people shooting us at the lights in this country is beyond me, but let's move on from that. The fact is we have a massive unemployment problem and we've got to get this economy going. So interest rates is one of the tools. Mia, you're right. You can see, you know, people who are saving, yes, they need higher interest rates. But what we need in South Africa is to get this economy growing, and interest rates are only one tool. You know, if the banks won't lend money, what's the point? So we need to get these banks lending.
Let Mia come back in here. Lindsay, you're on a losing wicket, my friend. You're not going to get a word in on this show unless you start jumping in aggressively. So Mia, we're going back to you. Lindsay, your cue is next. You're going to have to come in aggressively if you can do it. You have got an onslaught here, and you don't have David to hold your hand.
Please go to Mia now after Joanne's diatribe there, and then I'll come in. I'll make notes. Away you go, Mia.
I agree absolutely with you, Joanne. I think, you know, the fact that we don't have enough jobs in the country, don't have enough people creating jobs, because the big thing that I always say is that, you know, people focus so much on job creation, but job creation is a byproduct of, as you say, investment in the country, of entrepreneurs getting the opportunity, relaxed regulation, relaxed trading environments. So those are, I mean, there's so many components to it, way more than only the interest rate. But an unfortunate part of the interest rate in South Africa is the fact that the consumer who don't have a job is actually lending money to just live. So I mean, there is many issues here that's really on the table, despite the fact that companies aren't really investing. So that's another fact. You know, people and big companies aren't actually going out lending money to invest in the country because they're so worried about the economic prospects of South Africa. So it's a vicious cycle, and I think it's way more than only the interest rates.
I think it's really interesting, Mia, Joanne, Bronwyn, that the South African economy is not as primed, as not as sensitive to interest rate moves as, for example, the United States of America or the United Kingdom or any other so-called developed world country, because of the things that, Mia, you've just said. In other words, we don't have bonds and mortgages and loans and credit cards that are linked, or the majority of the population doesn't have it, that are linked to the movement in interest rates. So it's very good to have a pillar of the financial institutions in South Africa, i.e. the South African Reserve Bank, being so responsible. But on the other hand, I do think that fiscal policy at the moment, with interest rates so low in South Africa, fiscal policy is far more important. And didn't we see, Bronwyn, at just around the corner from your studio, the Santon Convention Centre, Cyril Ramaphosa coming up with his, I think the third of his let's get some money into the country.
The investment conference, the South Africa Investment Conference.
That's the one, yeah. And he got, I think, about 110 billions worth of pledges, and that's on its way now to the 5-year plan of 1.2 trillion. But
there are pledges. Let me ask you this. I mean, and ladies, jump in.
Yeah.
Pledges versus guaranteed money. There could be a huge gap between the two. Joanne.
I'll give Joanne a chance.
Well, no, look, I mean, the words are easy, right? Lots of companies have pledged, and a lot of them were planning to do it anyway. So it wasn't new money. That's the first thing. But more importantly, and again, I'm trying not to be too pessimistic here, but from what I read yesterday, 110 billion of the 700 and something billion has actually been spent. So South Africa is very good on words. We need actions. I don't know what Mia feels, but it's good news, but let's be honest, it's hot air at the moment.
Well, we do give the president a relatively hard time generally on this.
We do.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that I feel a little bit more optimistic about this, because I think when you consider what they've done after the first 2 of those conferences, they've actually invested about a third of the first year's money already. And we need to remember that, these projects aren't something that you just plug in and play and there's all the money invested in South Africa. It's obviously ramped up over time. And we've seen big projects. Just thinking about Aspen, we've spoken about that on the show a couple of times now, where they've built that very, very good state-of-the-art plant in PE and Port Elizabeth, and they will be actually producing the Johnson & Johnson vaccine hopefully soon. And it's a world-class facility. But the rest of the pledges rather have actually, many of them have been on hold due to the fact that we've seen the COVID outbreak. COVID, it's been an unprecedented year. So, I'm not too surprised that everyone didn't, just go ahead and invest money if you can't do anything with lockdowns and things being moved around, being very difficult to actually get anything off the ground in this year. So it does seem that there are some green shoots. I can't think of anyone better to be in the position to raise this capital for us in South Africa. I can't think of anyone instilling the confidence that Cyril has. Yes, there's a lot of critique against him. He hasn't done anything right, but please show me a politician that has. So I'm still very positive about the fact that at least they're trying.
Mia, I actually think you're right. Sorry.
Well, let me ask, did you get a call from President Ramaphosa this week? Have you been asked to stand down on any criticism? Because I thought you were with me earlier on this, and
no,
now you've
that's
gone
true.
full circle.
So I must say, I'm also, it's very important for all of us to remain a critic of what's happening, and to point out all the mistakes that's being made. But I think everyone in South Africa is very aware of all the mistakes that's been made. It's all over Twitter, it's all over social media and the news. And I think, we just need to give them some slack and focus on some of the good news and the good things that they're also trying to do, because that is the sort of things that will actually, at the end of the day, start instilling confidence in South Africa, where people feel comfortable about the future of the economy and sort of just want to give it a chance and consider investing, because that at the end of the day is what we all really want.
Let's talk about vaccines now, because the vaccine...
Oh, well, can we not just go back? I was just about to say, I think that is very sobering advice, and that we actually do need to start looking at the glass half full rather than half empty. So, Mia, we're going to take that on board.
Okay,
now,
great.
You can segue off to Aspen.
Why Aspen? I'm talking about the vaccine story, whether it be Pfizer, whether it be, what's the other one?
Moderna,
and then there's another one as well, which is AstraZeneca and Oxford University collaborating. So eventually we are going to be able to do it. But I've said this before, the vaccines are all very well, and they boosted, the idea of the vaccines boosted the market. But on the other hand, it's like going to IKEA. You don't have IKEA in South Africa, but if you go to IKEA, you see this amazing product, a table or a wardrobe or something, and then you think, this is fantastic, this is brilliant, this is only 357 euros, but you have to take it home in a flat box and open it up and build the blasted thing, which is impossible for somebody like me. So that was the best analogy I could come to Joanne, when it came to the vaccines, because the vaccines have to be, the most efficient one, I think, has to be kept at -70. You have to be injected twice with it. And so it's not going to be a pill that you take, and it's not going to be...
Yes, Lindsay, we're going with glass half full rather than half empty. Could you
No,
please...
I can't have three blondes going with the half glasses. I've got to come up with... I've got to be...
Okay, Lindsay.
No, you've
Lindsay,
got the full glasses.
It's getting better, okay? I mean, there is a glass half full argument here with vaccines. We've seen it globally. We've seen how the stock market's reacted. And just so you know, the Moderna one is 94% effective, and it's at -20 or something like that. So it's not -70 anymore, because previously, just back to the Aspen comment, the previous one we couldn't have actually manufactured in South Africa because we didn't have the fridges that could actually sell it to anyone. Okay, so however we're going to distribute it. But this new one, it's -20, and I think the Oxford one's even better or more easy to get to market. Look, we've seen the markets react to this, maybe not this week, but last week, we saw everyone that got bullish on global growth again. It's the only reason value shares were starting to rally. So there is a lot of optimism out there. In fact, I'd say in the very short term, maybe too much, because everyone's suddenly an equity bull.
Now let's also pull in the US election. Obviously, we still have Biden as president-elect of the United States. Trump is digging his feet into the White House. But surely, I mean, when all is said and done, he will be pulled out of the White House in the next, what is it now? How many days has he got left?
56.
56 days. He will be dragged out of that White House, and Biden and his family can move in. Biden and Dr. Biden can move in. Wouldn't that be the picture? We don't have to worry about this. Or do we have to worry about this, Mia?
I think, I'm still slightly worried. I agree with you. That's the best scenario, and that's the scenario I think will play out. But I mean, I did look at what he's done in the last couple of weeks, who he's fired, who he's actually appointed, and how he's actually treating the troops in Iraq, pulling troops without the protocol being followed. It's a very dangerous fine line that is actually playing, and it could actually still wreak a lot of havoc in the next 56 days. So I'm just slightly worried about that. And I think sort of the market is ignoring it to a great extent. And I agree. I mean, there's been so much optimism about the vaccine. There's still so much work that needs to be done before a big lot of people can be vaccinated. And just back to the election, I think, there's still a lot that needs to be happened to pin this down.
To be fair, we need to name and shame Joanne Baynham, because when I spoke to her about 2 weeks ago on my podcast site, she confessed that if she had a choice, if she was available to vote in the United States of America, she would have voted for Trump. And I said, it doesn't matter whether his policies are going to make you money. The fact is that this person... Yeah, I know. I saw the two of you doing that. I know, exactly. So, Joanne, you've got to... I'm not going to go through the whole conversation that we had, but please justify the fact that you would have voted for that horrific individual.
We're listening keenly.
Yeah,
Lindsay, I do love you. Excuse me. What I said to you was, I'm an out-and-out capitalist. And I find the socialist policies coming through the Biden camp quite terrifying. I do, and I still do. And I also find this kind of lockdown mentality that we've got in the world today, where governments are telling us how to run our lives, equally terrifying. So my comment on Trump was not that he was a nice human being. We all know he's a horrendous human being. He's absolutely diabolical. My point about Trump was he lets me get on with my life. He doesn't lock down cities. He lets economies flourish. He lets people get on with things. That was my point. Clearly, no one is going to miss Trump at the White House because he's a horrendous human being. My point was more about capitalism and more about the fact that I am genuinely worried about countries locking down their citizens. And I find the lack of freedom we all have today terrifying.
So, Joanne, you are lucky that we are nearly at the end of the show, because we don't want to go into that discussion on the show. It has been heated. And David Shapiro would have actually, I think he would have jumped up and down had he heard those statements. But yes.
Or hating me or thinking I'm great. I don't know which way we're going with this.
The first one.
So Lindsay, you want to take us to the close and throw forward to anything that we should look to next week?
Yeah, I think what we should do, Bronwyn, is get a whole sort of brains trust around, and I've mentioned that phrase before, because I want to know from Joanne, from Mia, from David, and from all sorts of other people that we can get together on some big Zoom call, is whether the habits that have been formed over the last 8 to 9 months, whether it be socially, socio-economically, or whether it comes down to financial services and the way that we look at the market, are they going to stay in 2021? Will 2021 be even more impactful than 2020 was? So just try and organise that if you can before the end of the year. But
all right, well, just tell me, how many people do you think we should have on the call for next week? Because let's play with this formula. I think I reckon we can get 8 people. Let's give David Shapiro the shock of his life. He's going to come in. I will book only the 4, and then there are going to be a whole bunch of more people coming in. And David, we're going to take him by surprise because he's not here.
I think that the 4 of us should be part of it as well. We should be the core of it, and then bring in some other people. And I'll because I'm a good producer, I'll give you the names. Anyway, that was What a Week. And What a Week this week.
No, DT has to start featuring again. I mean, you forgot to tell people that a Dutch actress phoned you because they wanted your duck, which we can't see today. They wanted to star your duck in a movie. Featuring your duck in a movie.
It's a long story, and Bronwyn's entirely inappropriate. But anyway, there's DT, delirium tremens, the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is whether there's 2 elephants actually. There's the election, which Mia is worried about, and there's also the change of habits, or the lack of change of habits for next year. So that's that. But anyway, I'll go back to my outro, which is that was What a Week, and it was populated this week by Joanne J. Baynham, and also Mia the Murmurer Kruger from Kruger International, and my ex personal assistant on television. What's your name? Bronwyn Nielsen. And I'm Lindsay Williams, of course, from strictlybusinesspodcast.com. The show will be back same time next week.
Thanks, guys.
You're not going to get the last word today, Lindsay. Thanks for joining us for What a Week.